Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Martha Simmons with another session of Preaching and Preachers on Facebook via Restream. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Good afternoon. Good morning to my people on the West Coast who get up early to check out the broadcast. Good afternoon. Come on in and let me know that you are out there for another practical broadcast. I love giving out information that's going to help people. Come on in and let me know that you all are out there. You are going to be helped by this broadcast. And when you come in, tag someone. Tag someone to let them know they can jump on now, or this will be up on my page for 2 weeks and they can check it out there. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Waiting for one of our guests to come back. Technology will do what it wants to do, but I think he will be back. He will be back. Okay. There we go. And he's back. Okay. So he won't be touching any more buttons throughout the broadcast. Come on in, people. Let me know that you are out there shouting out my people in the Midwest, people on the East Coast, and certainly those in the dirty South. Herbert Ponder, good to have you with me. Come on in. And when you come in, tag someone. Type in the name of a person you know will be helped by this broadcast. It's a sunny Monday in Atlanta, and I am just glad to be doing this particular broadcast about a subject of interest that is near and dear to my heart with two wonderful people. Nicole McDonald. All right. Thank you for being with me. All right, when y'all come in now, like I said, type in the name of another person. Good afternoon. We're going to give people about 30 more seconds to come in, and then we're going to get started because I want to give my guest as much time as possible. We saw so many wonderful comments and so much interest. So I know that on the main day, which I think is now Wednesday, that people play back and watch the broadcast, there is going to be a lot more interest because people really are interested in this topic. I am going to go ahead and get started. As always, let us pray for those who are sick. Let us pray for those who are suffering through a season of bereavement. And it is Women's History Month. Let us pray for all women clergy and missionaries around the world who are doing the great and difficult work that they often do. Let us pray. All right, let's just get right to the topic. Let's get right to it. Today, I want to talk about getting a Ph.D. and African American preaching, and in this case, African American preaching and sacred rhetoric. And we've just got two wonderful people to help me go through this topic today. First, we have the Reverend Dr. Courtney Buggs. She is the director of the Ph.D. program in African American preaching and sacred rhetoric and assistant professor of homiletics at Christian Theological Seminary. Her research interests center on ecumenical practices of sacred proclamation, both inside and outside the pulpit, womanism, and liberative teaching practices. Dr. Buggs is ordained in the American Baptist tradition and has served congregation in the United States, Korea, Germany, and Japan, ministering across denomination. She received the B.S. from Louisiana Tech in electrical engineering, the Master of Public Administration from the University of Oklahoma, the MD from Candler School of Theology, and the PhD in religion from Emory University, persons, community, and religious life, homiletics, all of those were her area of study at Emory University. Joining her is the wonderful Reverend Dr. Nick Peterson. He is the assistant director of the PhD program in African American Preaching and Sacred Rhetoric and assistant professor of homiletics and worship at Christian Theological Seminary. His research focuses on Black Christian practices of care and fidelity. Dr. Peterson is an ordained itinerant elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. He received the BA from Marshall College in Lancaster, Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the MD with honors from Lancaster Theological Seminary, and the PhD through the Graduate Division of Religion at Emory University. Good afternoon, people.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon. Good
Thank you
afternoon.
all. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you for everyone who has tuned in. This is Dr. Martha Simmons with another session of Preaching and Preachers. And today we're going to talk about the PhD in African American Preaching and Sacred Rhetoric. When you come in, please type in the name of another person who you know will be helped by this broadcast or they need this information. They can jump on right now or it'll be up on my page for 2 weeks. Let me just get right to the questions because folk just can't. I don't know what they thought I was going to do other than tell them to watch the broadcast, but they flooded my inbox this week. So I'm glad to be here to get their questions answered. And if you are on a part of the broadcast, if you are online and you have a question that's a burning question, go ahead and put it in the chat. Let's start with the director. Dr. Bugs, why the PhD in African American Preaching and Sacred Rhetoric? Why was it developed and how long has it existed?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just say first, thank you to Dr. Simmons for even having us on to be able to talk about the program. So we're excited about that. And hello to everyone who's logging in. So the program began in 2016 with the first cohort beginning in 2017. And this was the vision, I must mention, of Reverend Dr. Frank Thomas, who began even in homiletical circles when I was a student, talking about what it means to study Black preaching at the highest levels. So we talk about the significance of Black preaching, but what does it mean to study it, not just do it? And so through a number of consultations that some people possibly were a part of, the program was birthed. And we began that first cohort, really leading them thinking very critically about the tradition. We believe that the tradition has such depth, such beauty. Those are words that Frank Thomas would use, that is worthy of study. And if we really believe that, then this is our opportunity to continue to support what it means for Black preaching to make a difference in the lives of people. I would add that it's all the more important now as we see the erasure of Blackness, period,
Yes.
in Black speech and Black history. It's all the more important that we continue to really do our work and do our study and learn our history to include our religious history, of which preaching is a part.
Yeah. Dr. Peterson, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are in a generation now, particularly within Black theological education, as well as Black study writ large, that there are enough resources that we can mine our own structures and systems
Yes.
and not see them as derivative of
Mhm.
what other contexts and communities are doing. And I think that this program is a reflection of that, right? As Dr. Bug said, that this tradition is deep enough, it's diverse enough, it's
Right.
complex enough to not only warrant this level of research, but that there are enough ideas and
Mhm.
lanes that people can sort of function in,
Right.
that it's time for this. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's definitely time. There were those of us in way back in seminary who is saying, we wish, we wish, we wish. And so
Yeah.
I'm thankful to Dr. Thomas for birthing this and for the two of you for carrying it forward. So Dr. Bugs, that said, and you know, like I said, people came in my inbox asking me to do this. And so I'm going to have you all do it. Describe the program. What are its main, perhaps the wrong word, but main components? And tell me that tuition range. People do want to know about the money.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the money. So the components of the program, I should say, are very much like a typical PhD program that you might be in any other institution. Um, and so I'll describe those in a second. One of the key things that distinguishes this program is it's a low residency model. So we're not asking you to move to Indianapolis and live here in residency. It's a low residency model. What that means is during your coursework, which is about the first 3 years, 2.5, you come to Indianapolis for 1 week at a time, 1 week intensives. And that happens 4 to 5 times a year, depending on which year it is. So you have your coursework, you have your exams, you have your proposal writing, and you have dissertation writing. Those are the 4 phases, if you will. The first one is from 1 to 2 semesters, in your dissertation writing, and how long that takes. It just depends on students' topic and the work that they've done. Framework of the program. So I'll address costs and then I'll yield to my colleague. The CTS has committed to the first, let me rephrase that, the first few years, which is your coursework, CTS has committed to scholarship. So you're not paying those first few years. CTS has committed to scholarship for that. Let me say tuition
Whoa.
scholarship.
Yes.
It's tuition, scholarship, and fees.
Whoa.
So your travel would still be on the student's responsibility. And then you pay a small fee. Some of those details we'll get into in our open house on Thursday. I do want to put in a plug for that. On Thursday, CTS has an open house. You can still register for that, cts.edu, events, PhD open house. We'll go into the other costs that would be associated with the program after those first 2.5 years.
Okay. Okay. Now that's major, just right there. So for those first
Yeah.
3 years, scholarship. CTS has committed to funding this particular people who are in this program, not funding your travel when you come for your
Correct.
intensive, but
Correct.
funding your overall study. That is major, especially at a time when we could see the entire Department of Education disappear.
Yes.
mhm.
People really need to understand that that's a possibility and it's significant and it's going to turn education upside down even more than it's been turned upside down. Dr. Peterson, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that comes as an ethical commitment that the institution has for this program to not be financially burdensome.
Yes.
It is the case, for folks who are even at R1 places like where, Dr. Bugs and I went, that even with the stipends that, institutions are able to
Yeah,
pay, the cost of living in the cities where these institutions reside often don't match,
right.
what it takes to be at, at these places. And so in combination with the low residency model, right, the money that students will have to spend to pay for travel and arrange housing, during those week-long intensives still compel in comparison to what it may cost to uproot your whole
That's
family
right.
to another city, and some of those things. So the idea of, providing scholarship, especially on the front of that program, is really so that people aren't taking out obscene amounts of debts just to have a roof over their head,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah,
an important thing to note.
yeah.
So
And that's
Yeah, one of
and
our
it's
values, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, Dr. Bugs.
I was just going to say to build on that, one of our internal program values is no life altering debt. So we don't want
Mm,
to be a program that you come in and then you have this life altering debt. That's no testament. So that is a big part of what we're working with the institution, and even in those later years, we're attentive to what does it cost for you to continue your studies.
all right, all right, all right. I think that might be the biggest thing that you all say for this whole broadcast. Seriously, because as I said, just the ways that people get to attend school, especially beyond college, etc., are being turned upside down and in some cases eliminated. Someone just asked, are there any other divinity schools or seminaries and universities on the cusp of instituting similar PhD programs in African American preaching? If there are, I don't know about them. Do you all know about any?
I hear whispers, but I'm too focused on the one at CTS.
Yeah, see, I've heard whispers for a decade. Okay. I've heard whispers for a decade. So
yeah,
that's what I'm the way I'm saying that. I don't know of any. Okay. A whisper is not a program.
yeah, and the piece along with that is that even outside of PhD programs, what we do know is that there is a surge of interest in Black
Yes.
preaching, and this is affirmed through
Yeah.
the work that Lily is doing through the compelling preaching
Mm-hmm.
grants, and the number of Black denominations and Black communions that have received money to do this important work, and even how in the operation of these Lilly grants, our doctoral students and graduates are implementing these grants as a part of their own work and contribution to the field and to the church. And so, again, to the vision of Dr. Thomas, Frank Thomas, um, we want to see a renaissance in preaching, right, through this careful study
Mm-hmm.
of Black preaching, and I think that we are seeing that fruit. So it will be great if down the road we see more of these kinds of
Right.
programs, because they are warranted,
Absolutely.
and they're warranted not just in terms of what they offer the academy, but what they offer the church and the world writ large.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So,
you know
to the person who asked that, like I said, we've heard whispers. We've heard whispers, but for right now, there aren't any. Dr. Peterson, let me go to you to ask. Many PhD programs don't want students to work during their first 3 and sometimes 5 years of a program. They don't want you to work at all. And you all are doing it differently. You're saying low residency and folk are continuing their day jobs. And a lot of the people I know who've been in your programs were pastors, and you all weren't thinking about telling people to leave their churches. Say something about that, Dr. Peterson.
Yeah, so there's somewhat of a misnomer, even I think, in the kind of programs that Dr. Bugs, the more traditional programs that are out there, in that the idea is that you don't work full time, and some of what that means is that you don't work full time and get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's no
But
doubt.
Right.
you enter these programs and life is still happening,
Mhm.
and taking care of a family is full
That's
time
right.
occupation. Trying to work, in other sort of responsibilities that you have, are all part of the labor, whether or not you are compensated for it. The
Yeah.
other piece is that many of these programs are designed on an 18th and 19th century model, where the
Mhm.
person who comes to get the doctoral degree has all of this support behind them that carries the load of everything else.
Yeah.
So they sort of enter the doctoral program as a monk,
Mhm.
only focusing on that work. And the reality is, like, we just don't live in that world.
Mhm.
And particularly as we think about the demands and exigencies that face Black communities and Black religious leaders, it was necessary to think of a program that could accommodate the life that people have.
That's right.
And so, as you named earlier, our low residency, our commitment to not have life altering debt, and our sort of orientation toward the scholar practitioner, who is really trying to think about what this work means on the ground.
Yeah.
It is often been the case, and this is, the first and first through third wave of Black theology, and even womanist scholarship, is the sort of suspicion between what religious folk are doing in the academy and then what's actually happening on the ground in the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
And I think what our program really does well is that it requires people to think about, like, how does the fact that every single Sunday, or regularly, you are before a living faith community and you're asking these questions that warrant this level of intensive research. There's a built-in accountability in that pool, and in that play, such that the academy does not become a silo separate from the communities that produce us, those of us
Mhm.
who enter into this kind of work, and also such that we recognize that the questions that emerge from our communities of faith actually are worth our best thinking, and they're worth
Yes.
us really engaging. So those kind of commitments, I think, help us to understand how this program can be flexible enough for someone who is pastoring full time, and those pieces. Another component is, and this seems kind of counterintuitive, is that if you are pastoring the church, you have to have a certain level of executive functioning skills to be able to manage the quick pivoting demands of
That's right.
serving a congregation.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to, how to organize your time. You have to be able to figure out what's urgent, what's important, what's needed, what's not needed. You have to be able to manage a budget. I mean, you're basically running a small operation. And those skills are skills that are very, very, very transferable to completing a doctoral program,
Mhm.
and not just starting it. So, in the way that some people, may go straight from undergrad into a graduate program or doctoral program based off of their academic potential alone, it doesn't mean that they've cultivated the social emotional learning skills that will really persist, in completing this kind of program. So we do find that our students have to be a lot clearer, right? You can't
Right.
just kind of figure this thing out. You actually have to, like, no, like, I now need to know that, these pieces have to be done in order for
Mhm.
me to progress. So there's a
Mhm.
way that the stakes are higher, for our students, both in terms of the communities that they serve, but also the demands that they are under in general.
Dr. Bugs, let's talk a little bit about the pieces, the
Mhm.
components. Like I said, folk came in my inbox uh, before, as soon as I started, posting about the program. I know that the program requires languages. Okay, what languages? So if you decide you're one of those people, like when I considered doctoral study, I said, okay, I'm got to get one of these before I start. What languages do you all accept, and can students take them before entering your program?
So we require Hebrew and Greek, are the two. If people have taken them within the last 5 years, so some people may be finishing up other programs or finished in the last few years, then we look at that on their transcript and we're able to bring those in. But for those who come in haven't had the languages in a while, if ever, there is also an opportunity built into the program where they can take them. So and we do those virtually. So they'll take, I don't remember the order now, but maybe Greek the first summer and Hebrew the next summer, so that they get functional with these languages. If there's some other languages that they need, that is pertinent to their work, then we
Mhm.
talk with them about, okay, how do we navigate getting those languages? But for the most part, what we're really interested in is them having a utility with Greek and a utility with Hebrew.
Okay, okay. So this is not one of those you got to take German and all of that kind of stuff. This is we want you to really understand uh the Bible and that kind of thing.
Right. These primary languages that typically we want to have some utility in. Yes.
Mhm. Okay, okay. So for everybody who's they scared of languages, all of those kinds of things, you do have to do the languages, and if you get them before you begin, and no longer than 5 years before, then you are good. Is it a year of languages? Is it one course?
It's a semester. Thanks
It's
for
a
that.
semester.
A
Okay,
semester.
okay, it's
Yes.
a semester. Okay. um the dropout rate, let's get right to it. A lot of folk in PhD programs, and I'm talking all kinds of PhD programs, programs in the sciences, the humanities, all kinds of PhD programs, like engineering, life sciences, anything, is large. It's pretty high. The last time I was working with two of my sons in ministry in PhD programs, I think that rate was something like 35-45% for just the humanities. Okay, it's even higher for the sciences, that folk end up ABD. With that said, what do you all have in place, Dr. Peterson? What do you all have in place, okay, to help students graduate, especially given that you allow them to work and continue to pastor, do whatever it is they're doing while they're in the program?
Yeah, so one of the things that a kind of internal model that we have is we believe in engineering success, right? Success
Okay.
is not an accident. It requires careful attention and a recognition of limitations, opportunities, challenges, and all of those pieces. One of the strengths of our program, I think, as opposed to other sort of other configurations of the PhD program, is that we have one program.
Okay.
And there are not many pathways that you can make it through the program. It is a cohort-based program. So
Hmm.
unlike most doctoral programs where you come in and you may have a starting cohort, but you all branch off in your directions. Bible folk go this way, ethics folks go this way, ministerial arts folks go another way,
Hmm.
theology people go another way. With the cohort model, you are tracking, particularly through coursework, with the other members of your cohort, which builds in a kind of a sort of um, natural rhythm of accountability with that, and people who are understanding more clearly exactly what phase of the program you're in. So that's a piece I think that is important for how we think about retention. Another aspect of that has to do with it being a singular program, and what that means for the kind of research that our students are going to do. And in that regard, our fields are fairly focused. You are doing some aspect of Black study. That tenor may be historical for some other folks. It may be constructive for another group of people. It may be critical across the board. But there's a facility that we're cultivating, within the program, that we are taking the Black religious practice of preaching seriously in that regard. Some of the things that we've learned over the course of the years
Right.
is to really help students streamline what happens when you finish your coursework.
Hmm.
um, this is the place, I mean, as you noted, in terms of the ABD, when
Right.
people are in the residential component, whether it's low residency or high residency for coursework, you feel that rhythm, right? 14
Right. Right.
weeks, however that semester
Hmm.
unfolds. It's when you are left now, go there, go ye therefore into the library and prosper, and convert these texts into pages of a dissertation. And so one of the things that we have cultivated is sort of benchmarks to help students track where they should be as they're moving through exams, and then subsequently what it should look like as they're moving through, their course or proposal, dissertation proposal, and obviously in the dissertation. Um, all of those things are sort of demystifying what was a very mysterious process for many of us, where after you finish coursework, it's sort of like you can do anything. All of these things are possible, and that can be overwhelming. And
Right.
so, how do we bite that down? So, for example, just this week, we had our cohort members of cohort 3 on campus doing a course in research methodologies. And so in meeting with them, I walked through a whole exercise of how do we think about our exams in relationship to dissertation topics? And how do we understand which way our thinking is intervening, right? Is our thinking intervening in a womanist ethic, or is our thinking taking something from womanist ethics to intervene upon our theology of Black preaching? And so those kinds of direct conversations in many programs just happen in the hallways, or they happen because somebody who's a few years ahead of you pull you to the side and say, hey, think about it like this. This is something that's going to be helpful. We just have to build those things in
Yeah.
because our students are not absorbed in a larger sort of, they're not eating and drinking the air of an academy structure where those things are just going to naturally kind of fall into conversations that they have in the library. So as much as possible, we make explicit our expectations. We make explicit the way that students can go about doing the work and supporting them along in that process. I mean, that's even like our library mail students books that we can't have, that we don't have in electronic format, so the students have access to the resources that they need where they are, wherever they are in the country. So I think those are the things that the other piece that's really helpful is, Dr. Bugs and I are not far outside of these programs. And so the trauma of persisting through is fresh on us. And,
Oh God.
much of what, again, this is kind of an ethical orientation.
Yeah.
Pursuing a PhD should not be hazing, right? We
Thank you.
believe that the work is valuable enough that whatever we can do to disencumber you doing this important work, then we do that. But you still got to do your work, right? You still
Absolutely.
have to
Absolutely.
lean into your project. And, what we are encouraging students that it is always much easier to maintain momentum, even if you are moving slowly, keep
Right.
up the momentum.
Just
But
keep
to sort of
going.
think that you could take a break, come back, take a break, come back, take a break, and come back. That doesn't work in any kind of program.
That's
And
right.
it certainly doesn't work in a program where, you don't have to duck us in the hallways because you're not physically,
You're not here.
right. You're not physically
You're
here.
not in.
So
You're not in the hallways. But like you said, you still have to do your work. So those numbers, those just at ABG, those numbers are high for all kinds of programs. So Dr. Bugs, you're the person in charge. So how are you thinking about retention and people going 5 years, 7 years, or can you go beyond 7 in your program?
You can. It's designed for up to 8 with one option for an extension. And so, as Dr. Peterson said, I mean, well, I was thinking it as he said it. PhD programs are tough. And
Mm-hmm.
so we like for people to be real clear about why are you applying, and if you're accepted, why do you then accept the acceptance? Because they're
Mm-hmm.
not easy. And then all the more, as you say, when you're not in the hallways. So we are very intentional about if you're coming into coursework, we tell you what that's going to be like. It's going to be painful for the first 2.5 years, because as soon as you're finishing one course, you already have the syllabus for the next course. It's
Mm-hmm.
moving that quickly. When that finishes, you have your first language. When that finishes, you've got the August course. So this is a very fast moving those first couple of years. And then as soon as you come out of those courses, like cohort 3, as we just finished up, we are immediately going to have a conversation with them about this is what comprehensive exams looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not wondering what's expected of you. We're telling you exactly what's expected of you. So we have these points along the way. What I call them is touch points. So whereas we can't talk to you in the hallway all the time, there is these ongoing touch points that happen throughout the year or that happen throughout whatever phase you're in to just kind of help you continue to stay focused. It's very easy in any program that you're in, my own included, to stray when you get out of that coursework,
Yeah.
or even after you pass comps. You've got this big hump. You've really had this big hump that you've gotten over, and now I got to sit down and think about this dissertation. It's really easy to stray. So one of the things that we've implemented is just ongoing touch points where you're
Mhm.
constantly having to speak with one of us to say, okay, this is where I am now. This is what I'm doing now. Not as a to kind of get in someone's way, but our goal is for you to finish. Our
Yeah.
goal is always for you to finish.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to implement things that help you finish.
Mhm. Mhm. All
Yeah.
right. All right. All right. So, in terms of people finishing,
Mhm.
getting through the program, getting through the coursework, who teaches in your particular program, and why should folk really consider your program? I mean, is there anything you can do now with a PhD in preaching? Why should people even consider your program? I mean, number
Yeah.
one, like I said, I want to repeat, like I said, money doing your coursework. Okay, so anyway, go ahead, Dr. Bugs.
Okay, I'll start there. So, the who teaches in the program? CTS faculty teach in the program. So that's the first part is a number, not all of our faculty, but a number of the faculty teach in the program. We also have affiliate faculty, depending on what speciality that the student might need or that we've baked into the program. So our program is preaching and sacred rhetoric. So we're
Mhm.
also thinking about just public speech acts that is not necessarily preaching per se. So we're thinking about rhetoric as well. So we have affiliates who teach, and then we have what I would refer to as special instructors, where maybe there's a particular topic that we feel like we need to weave this into, even though it's not one of our core courses. Then we
Mhm.
invite in people also to do those kinds of courses. So some of the examples of people who are affiliate or who have taught for us: Andre Johnson out of Memphis teaches for us. Valerie Bridgman teaches for us. We've had Dr. Renita Weems has taught for us once. So there's a number of people that I could name, and in addition to CTS faculty. So
Mhm.
that's who teaches in the program. And then the question of, so what do we do with it? I see that also in the chat. What do you do with this? Absolutely. There's going to be
It
a
was
number
all
of
over my inbox too.
Okay.
What can I
Ab-
do with it? I mean, I
yeah,
know
what
what
do
they
I
can
do
do
with
with
it?
it. What can they
So
do with it?
I think people also have to ask themselves, what is it that you want to do with it? So
Mhm.
absolutely, there's the what might be the expected course that somebody might go into the academy. They also might not. We expect people who are already in their churches to stay there. We're not asking them to leave. So certainly, those are two primary places. And also, when I think about the program, what I want is for people to, whether they're in the academy or whether they are just staying with their churches, what I want is for us to be able to take this practitioner scholar model and help other people. So
Yeah.
in whatever way, so envision what is the work that you want to do. That might be activist work. That might be, you might be an elementary school teacher. I don't know. But what is the work that you want to do? And how do you take the critical, the word is not coming to me, that how do you take the critical skills and apply that to the very work that you want to do? So what
Mhm.
I'm not interested in is shaping everybody to look the same. I
Right.
am looking for people to have the same capability as they
Mhm.
come out of the program, and
Mhm.
then to be able to do the work that is most passionate to you. So for some people that means this is the right program for them. For other people, this is not going to be the right program because it's not going to lead them to the actual work that they want to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Dr. Peterson, add to that. What do you think people can do with this degree now?
So I am all about Black practice and the fecundity of Black faith. And I think that what we have done in our various communions, in our various churches, our various ways of meeting, um, has been nothing short of what Mother Ruby Stills would call spiritual genius.
Yes.
And we are steeped in the wisdom and the gift of oral tradition and the way that shows up across all these forms of Black aesthetics, right? And I think what becomes, you know, unique about the PhD is one, its relationship to writing. And I think what I lament about the kind of PhD program that I did was that it beat the hell out of my voice.
Mm.
And I learned how to move through academic spaces, not centering really what I wanted to say, but proving that I could say that what everybody else said in the way that would make sense within that space. Um, and both the orientation that our collection of faculty have, both the fact that this is offered through a standalone seminary that doesn't have the sort of publisher parish orientation that an R1 institution would have, for instance. Um, our students are not only able to choose topics that are relevant to the communities and contexts that they serve, but they're able to do so in a way that they don't have to kill themselves and kill the Black genius, the Black spiritual genius that is in them to do that. And so, in that regard, I believe that there's a kind of hospitality that the program can engender that, as Dr. Bugs is saying, can actually usher in a different orientation that we have to the way these practices are necessary for the thriving and surviving of our Black communities. And so, whether that's you teaching in a seminary format, or whether that's you taking preaching and offering that as a freedom school orientation or a freedom
Yeah.
school kind of approach within the larger world, whether that means that you do this kind of work by hosting preachers and doing work in the community, even like you're doing with this platform, Dr. Simmons, or whether that means that you commit to training people who will never step foot in a seminary,
Yes.
but who
Absolutely.
need to understand how Black sacred preaching or how Black sacred engagements with scripture and with rhetorical practice with persuasion is necessary to continue to do the work reaching forward. So there is, even in the creation of this program, an entrepreneurial spirit. And our task in moving students through the program is not to kill that, but to actually encourage that. And I think that what we try to discern, in the admissions process are people who have that orientation and people who can benefit from that orientation. This is not a program if you just want to be called Reverend Doctor. If you just want the flash of what it means to have a PhD, if you just want, to move in this register so that you have more respect in your denominational context, or to just kind of have a seal of approval. No, we want folks who want to do work that can change people's lives, and that can strengthen what our communities have invested so much time and energy in. We are not in a time where we can take for granted the opportunity to do this kind of work, because it is already under attack.
Very much so.
And
Like I
so,
said, it could.
yeah, it
A
is
lot of
under
things are
attack.
going to disappear.
So the
When it
stakes are
comes to
high,
yeah.
right? So this is not about show. This is not about um, all of the recognition for the sake of recognition. But this is an opportunity to do work that can have a real on the ground impact, and you not have to do this in a context where you're constantly having to justify why your Black questions are relevant and important.
Right. I
Yes.
Or
was.
you have to wade through all this research in German or French in order to get at the question, that's been bugging your grandmother and your brothers, for generations.
Yeah.
So some of what we are trying to do is we're trying to remove um, the thinly veiled anti-Black orientation that the Academy has had as a way of establishing rigor. You can do rigorous work and study Black folk.
Say it.
And study
Say
Black
that.
folk.
Say
Yes.
that.
Full
Absolutely
stop.
say that. I mean, come on. I mean, it's tiring. It is really, really, really tiring. And I'm glad that you talked about this in more than one way, as just, I got a PhD program, so now I'm going to teach. One of the people who came in my inbox said, what I really want to do is put together a certificate program for people who want to study preaching and understand it. And I thought that was just so marvelous. So marvelous. What a great way to use a degree. So I'm glad that, you've made clear that it depends upon what you want to do with the degree, not just what everybody has said or what people have always done. People can do different things now. Dr. Bugs, you can add to that if you like, before I get to another question I had.
No, yeah, I probably the only thing I would add is the field is wide open. So come with your imagination. That is the beauty of Blackness and Black religiosity. There are just so many lanes, and we welcome people who have this curiosity about ourselves, about our history, and then deciding how you want to navigate the world, with these new tools that you develop. So that's, yeah.
So with that said, when does enrollment for the next cohort begin, and how can folks apply to this program, Madam Director?
I'm so glad you asked. So let me start with, we have an open house, a full open house where we're going to even more detail than we've been able to do today on Thursday, March 20th. That's this week at 6:30 p.m. You can still register on our website, CTS website, cts.edu. Look for events, PhD open house. So we invite you to come. Virtual, you can come virtual, or if you happen to be in Indianapolis, you can certainly come in person as well. Our application cycle for the next cohort opens on May 1st. It is a 30-day window, so you'll have 30 days to get in all the elements. We'll talk about some of those elements on Thursday, and they'll also, the application will open on May 1st, as I said. And then orientation for cohort
Dr.
4.
Peterson, drop that edu that she said in the chat for me. Go ahead,
Okay.
Dr. Bugs.
If I can do that.
Orientation for the next cohort is in November. The cohort begins January of 2026. So once we have applications, the process moves pretty quickly to adjudication, notification, orientation, and then we're at cohort 4.
All right.
So
all right.
one thing, let me add this, Dr.
Mhm.
Simmons. I will add this. If you have not taken the GRE, you must have the GRE. Like all other PhD programs, you must have the GRE. And I say that up front because that often is the long pole for people that they haven't thought about it. You must take the GRE, and you do have time. So put that on the top of your list today and look that up to see when it's being offered. You must have the GRE.
And please know that taking everything now from the LSAT through the GRE to the MCAT, etc., everything now is close to disarray and could go toward disarray, could go toward total disarray. Please understand that that's what I mean. The things that I'm hearing from my colleagues who are on that side of getting people through programs, I mean, it's totally crazy. It is totally crazy, and it does not look like it's going to get better anytime soon. So give yourself time. Give yourself time to do the GRE. Give yourself time if you want to do a language before you start the program, and they're looking for Hebrew and Greek. Give yourself time. Give yourself time. And also, if you're going to do the languages, it's amazing that you have to say this to people, but you do. You have to do them at an accredited seminary.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't do the languages. Don't do
Duolingo will not work.
Let's say it this way. You must be able to send a transcript.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Just I want to be clear because people come up with some interesting approaches
Yeah.
to getting things done. Just know that. Dr. Peterson, give me as we go toward. We've only got about 9 minutes. Uh, any other comments that you want to give us about this program or African American preaching specifically?
Yeah. So one thing that I again just would be explicit about that I think is, that affirms this notion of the field is wide open is really along this notion of rhetoric and what
Mhm.
it means to do a program in sacred rhetoric. Um, I think that oftentimes when we think Bible, right, and we hear Bible, there is a way that we are already oriented toward a certain or that we have an orientation that means that certain questions are off the table.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's a commitment that we have in the study of sacred rhetoric is to recognize, and this is again going to some extent going back to the languages, that the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament collectively are using a wide variety of rhetorical practices to
Yes.
make these persuasive claims about who
Right.
God is, what
Right.
God is doing, and how that functions in our world. And what I want is I want Black folks to value our social locations, to value the contexts that have
Mhm.
produced us, to value the experiences that shape us, um, enough to recognize that we too have had to form forms and deploy forms of rhetoric to
Right.
not only make sense of our experiences, but
Mhm.
also to make sense of what the good news is, right, within our context, what liberation is, what thriving is, what care is, what all of these different things and what their theological import is in this program or in this time frame. And so what I'm excited for in working with our students, and particularly even, I'm working more closely with cohort 3 because this is the cohort that's currently finishing their coursework since I've been here at CTS, is the opportunity to help students recognize the necessity of doing this kind of Black work.
Yes. Yes.
And this is the truth about CTS. As it stands, we have more students and more people who are coming through our halls who are directly, not tangentially, not as an elective, not as a
Mhm.
side course, but who are directly engaging in depth Black preaching, Black sacred rhetoric, Black forms of hermeneutics and homiletics,
Mhm.
more so than any other place in the country. There are institutions that could swallow up our budget and what they spend in a month, but they
Mhm.
don't have this kind of commitment to thinking about Black thought and Black expression. And we are leaning into that. And anywhere where we can get support in any way that we can, align our resources to do that, we are doing that. And so I think this is a testimony for what is possible when we take what Black communities of faith have been doing for generations seriously, and
Yes.
don't see it as just a side piece, but see it as the main dish, the main
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is a gift, right, to our Black communities. It's a gift to our children and our children's children, and it's a gift to the church, as well as what we do beyond the walls of the church.
Yeah. Dr. Bugs, closing comments for us.
I will slightly echo what Nick just said. To me, it's a gift to be able to study Blackness and
Yes.
to not beat around the bush
Yes.
in terms of this is what we're talking about. We're talking about what we're talking about, Blackness and all the pieces that go with it. If I can tie in a couple of questions I saw in the chat. One asked about what kind of courses that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So homiletics or homiletical theory
Mm-hmm.
with attention to Blackness and Africana studies. rhetorical theory, with attention to
Sure.
Black homiletics and Africana rhetoric, pedagogy, Hebrew Bible, womanism, New Testament. Am I missing something, Nick? I think
Well,
those
in
are all
those, right, those are rhetorical orientations to Hebrew Bible and New Testament, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
um,
yes. So it's not just the
methods,
study of the
theory and
Hebrew Bible.
methods.
Yeah, methods. Yep, that's right. Research methods. So we don't just send you off to do a dissertation and figure it out. No, we actually have a class to talk about how do you do research. I think that's the core courses. And then you have the opportunity to take some electives that are attentive to whatever your path of study is.
Okay.
And then the second question I saw in the chat is taking Hebrew and Greek, not in the program. So if you can only take our PhD courses if you are enrolled in our program, with the exception of there are times when a student may be enrolled in a different PhD program that does not offer what we offer. And by exception, we allow those students to take a course or two, not the whole program, but a course or two.
They do cross registration.
Right, exactly. It's a cross registration. So we do have some of that, but we don't allow, and this is kind of typical of most PhD programs,
Right. It
for
is.
just people to come and be a part of the program.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Yeah. And I mean, you can, and of course, if they just want to attend CTS does have classes in Hebrew and Greek at the MDiv level.
Absolutely.
At the MDiv
Absolutely.
level. Yeah. So they can do that. They can definitely do.
The last thing I'll say is I
Dr.
invite
Bug.
you to the open house again.
cts.edu/events.
cts.edu/events. So you can attend the open house. It's online. You can get all of your questions answered. There are no stupid questions. So all of those people in my inbox this Thursday, again, that date is March
20th.
20th.
March 20th. At the time is
6:30 p.m.
Eastern Daylight Savings
Eastern
Time.
Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 p.m. You can get all of your questions answered. And also, if after that, you can certainly reach out to Dr. Bugs or Dr. Peterson if you have follow-up questions. Someone just asked, if you don't apply this year, when does the next window open?
3 years from now.
3 years from now.
We open the applications every 3 years.
Okay. So for those who, I mean, I know some people who are considering it, and because I'm glad for some of the people I know who are considering it, because I got to get us to write more on hooping. That's just me personally. I've just got to get that done. I'm not seeing enough of that hooping and cadence. I'm not seeing enough of that. So 3 years, you all got 3 years. Dr. Bugs, Dr. Peterson, I can't thank you all enough for, first of all, the work that you're doing. It's significant. It's especially it's always been significant and important, but in times like these, to affirm Blackness, to affirm the study of Blackness and our churches, and what we do in pulpits and what we do in terms of rhetoric to affirm that is so significant. So I can't thank you all enough for the work that you all are doing, and then for you giving freely of your time today. Thank you all so much. If you all have questions, especially because, like I said, Wednesday is now the day. It changed. Wednesday is now the day that people mainly view this broadcast. So if you have questions later, you can reach out to them. If you put your questions online in this particular chat, they may see them. If you send them and only I can see them, etc., I'm going to tell you, reach out to them. you want to do this if African American preaching and sacred rhetoric are of interest to you. God bless. Thank you for those for hitting my Cash App. I always want you to do that. I'm an independent scholar. And last but not least, and I say it all the time, share the video. It won't cost you anything, and it will help someone. There are people who don't know that they have the capacity to do this. And right now, they just have the interest. And use this to encourage them. God bless. Have a great week, everyone. Bye, y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons.